We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
I mean, what's Pro Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
Hey, as a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Ready to get into it?
Yeah.
All right. We're going team by team.
I would be very careful about slinging stones.
Am I going to get sued?
We got legal on this?
I like football season, and all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live, that's right, on YouTube here at Western and Southern Studio.
You're back.
I am.
In the building.
Yeah, we're back together.
Yeah.
Over the last 2 months, I think we did one show together in studio on the literal day that I was leaving town, which was like the day after you got back into town.
Yeah.
Well timed.
Uh-huh.
But that's what people do. They break up for the summer.
Well, the question is it better doing it that way, right, where we stagger our disappearances from the building, or we both just bounce for a month, and then you're left with somebody else completely?
Yeah, that would be terrible.
For an entire month.
People would forget about us.
I know.
So I just want to be the first to wish you a happy birthday.
Yeah, which you thought was today.
It was actually Monday.
Uh-huh, yeah.
I screwed up.
Mm-hmm.
I screwed up.
Yeah.
We had a crazy day Monday, so that also didn't help my brain. But my mom's birthday's yesterday, and I knew that you were on one side of my mom's birthday.
Yeah.
And I picked the wrong side. I thought it was today, and it was actually Monday. So happy birthday.
Thanks.
And welcome to 41.
Yeah.
And I'll get you a treat after if you want.
A treat?
Yeah.
Like a dog?
More like the bakery that you like.
Yeah, that works.
It still won't be open anymore, but they still do stuff around noon?
Oh, we might be tapped out by then.
All right, maybe tomorrow.
Brown Bear. Everything.
So, it's good to be back. Here we are.
Yeah.
I was on Mina's show recently.
I saw that.
She said, good job getting right to the content recently.
Oh.
And today we're not doing that.
Right. She was the one that gave us the feedback, right?
She initially gave us the feedback. Don't talk so much at the top.
Critical feedback.
Yeah. And then she gave us some follow-up feedback, a year later and said, hey, good job.
Which we're now ignoring. Yeah.
Completely ignoring. Because I haven't seen you in a while. We're just catching up here live on YouTube. So lots happened in the last couple days, mostly money related. Lots of new contracts. Justin Herbert of the Chargers, Trevon Diggs. We've got a couple tackles just this morning. Tytus Howard of the Texans, Andrew Thomas of the New York Giants. Will break those down, and we'll get into some year 2 breakouts and some other training camp news.
Did you get a new contract yet?
I have not.
I didn't get a new contract yet either.
Yeah, well,
'tis the season. We should bring it up.
Let the record show. We're looking for new contracts over here. If you're still listening over here, Chris.
Yeah.
I know he's prepping for the Hall of Fame game, and he's got
I mean, look,
he's got to know the 90 man for each team. But new contracts, get them over here.
Everyone is looking at this Justin Herbert deal, and they're like, what does this mean for Joe Burrow, right? I mean, the real question is, what do these contracts mean for our contract?
So I think more realistically, I look at the Pat McAfee contract and think, okay, what does that mean for us? I'm taller.
You are.
Than Pat.
Much taller.
Probably not as talented in any other way.
Right.
But, just because you can do a shooting star press and run this incredible show.
Do you think those kind of deals scale, So McAfee got whatever he got from ESPN. It was like $80 million or something, right? Like, what percentage of his talent do you have? Are you therefore worth that percentage of $80 million?
If I'm like
Kylian Mbappe, right, is apparently being offered like $1 billion from Saudi Arabia to play. I'm like, I don't know what percentage of Kylian Mbappe I am as a soccer player, right? Let's say it's 0.1%, but 0.1% of $1 billion is still quite a lot of money. I'll take that to go play in Saudi.
Yeah. I don't think it works like that, though.
No, I don't think it does. It doesn't seem to scale that way.
So, we'll use the McAfee deal as a baseline. As a baseline, right. And we'll discuss.
He set the benchmark.
We'll discuss with Chris.
Yeah.
See what happens.
Cool.
I'm sure that'll go well. Mm-hmm. All right, let's get into some of the QB news. Training camp has officially started for every single team.
Team.
Really quick before we really get into it, this is football stuff. I made a vow on Twitter or X. I made a vow that I'm going to buy into all the training camp hype again this year. Every video.
All of them.
Especially extra points when it comes from the official team account.
Okay.
So when you see that, check down.
So the more bias attached to the tweet, the more you're buying into it.
Buying into it.
Gotcha.
I'm gonna buy into all of it. Every team's going 17-0 this year.
Okay.
16-1 at worst, because it's positivity season on steroids here.
All right. Cool.
All right, let's go. Justin Herbert got paid, man.
He did. Got paid a lot of money.
So what's that do? Joe Burrow's up next.
Yeah.
5-year, $260+ million deal for Justin Herbert. More than Lamar Jackson. But so we've seen this forever, right, with quarterbacks. There was a point where Joe Flacco was the highest paid quarterback, and then Derek Carr was the highest paid quarterback. It's often who's the next good plus starter, good or better starter that needs a contract. And that guy ends up resetting the market, so to speak, or at least being at the top of the market. So Justin Herbert, he gets paid now. Joe Burrow's the next guy. And then people always circle back to what happens to the Patrick Mahomes deal. That was a 10-year deal where they have tons of flexibility in Kansas City to move money around and make sure that the salary cap is in healthy shape every single year. But Kansas City said at some point they're going to go back and revisit and make sure Mahomes is getting paid, similar to what his peers are, because Mahomes is right now 7th or 8th when it comes to just APY. So what are your thoughts here on Herbert getting paid?
A few things. Number one, the structure of the contract, I think, is kind of interesting because we had this is what all the contracts used to look like. Like every quarterback that signed, it was a 5-year deal, and then the numbers just kept getting bigger for inflation. The further we went, the salary cap's always going up. The quarterback contract is always going up. And then there was a period of time where it looked like everybody started to get quite creative with quarterback contracts. You had the Kirk Cousins route of I'll take a shorter deal instead of 5, give me 3, but make it fully guaranteed, and we just keep re-upping that. You had the Patrick Mahomes deal where I'm going to sign for a decade for $500 million, and we'll have this sort of rolling guarantee structure. And then obviously the Deshaun Watson contract kind of broke things given the desperation that the Browns had there, fully guaranteed 5-year deal. And now the last couple have sort of gone back to, what was wrong with the old structure? Let's just go back to that. 5-year deal, let's just make the numbers bigger. So Lamar signs this deal, and then the Herbert deal looks basically like the Lamar deal plus a couple of million across the board, which makes sense. I just find it interesting that the last couple of deals seem to have gone full circle and back to that tried and tested kind of quarterback contract structure.
I think part of that's because those are drafted quarterbacks that are the guy for that franchise. The Deshaun Watson thing was different in part because of everything he was dealing with off the field, but that essentially got pushed aside and there became a bidding war for him. But
right.
That's what it was. It was a bidding war for a guy that you had to trade for. So that was a little bit of what made that different. In Kirk Cousins, I think when he's on the open market, he's not the guy that was drafted. He's a free agent. He's not the guy that was drafted that you're saying, okay, we're going to lock him up for for his prime, basically. So we're back to Herbert's drafted and going to be the guy. Burrow's drafted, going to be the guy. Mahomes, Josh Allen. So, yeah, it is interesting where this Herbert deal lands. I do think the Chiefs will circle back on Mahomes and kind of bump him up a little bit, but they're still spending a lot, and they have incredible flexibility right now. But at some point, I don't think Mahomes wants to be like the 10th highest paid quarterback in the NFL or player in the NFL. So I think they'll revisit that, as they said.
Maybe, though part of that is also kind of comes with the territory when you sign a decade-long deal for $500 million. Like, at some point, what you can see what the graph looks like. Like, we know roughly how much the cap is going to go up in any given period of time. This is not a shock, is what I'm saying. Like, we've reached this point in the deal. Lee Steinberg? That's his agent's name,
yeah.
Right? Lee Steinberg isn't looking at this going, oh, wow, this totally blindsided us. Didn't see these deals coming. Like,
well that's why I think they said at the time, like, we know this will happen. We know
right.
At some point this contract is going to look super
But that
cheap,
deal
so we'll
was
get
sort
back
of
to it.
structured with this idea of it was going to be team-friendly over the longer period of time. It's, on the flip side of that is Patrick Mahomes got to ink $500 million when he signed his name to the paper. The Herbert one is kind of interesting because, clearly the Chargers have no doubts or reservations whatsoever about how good Herbert is or can be. We're all in this sort of cycle of there's a missing percentage to Justin Herbert somewhere, and he needs to show that last piece to get to the same category as the Mahomes, the Josh Allens, the Joe Burrows of the world. I mean, the Chargers have just paid him as if he's already there. And, if you look at a lot of just kind of conventional numbers, you get the argument. Like, he's got the most passing yards of any quarterback ever through their first 3 years.
Stop. No.
He's second
Stop.
to Dan Marino in touchdowns.
No. Stop it. I'm banning those stats.
But these are the things people look at.
Counting stats. I told you this was going to happen 2 years ago. I told you it was going to happen.
He's second to Marino.
I told you it was going to happen. Stop it.
How insane does that make Dan Marino? In 1985, he set the most touchdowns for any quarterback in the first 3 years. And
in
it still
the
hasn't been
16-game
broken.
schedule.
Yeah, and it still hasn't been broken.
When we went to the 17-game schedule, I said a couple years from now, we're going to see, Justin Jefferson's got the most receiving yards through 3 years. We've never seen anything like this. Yes, because we've never seen somebody play that many games.
Yeah.
It's also really good, Justin Jefferson and Justin Herbert. Just stop with the counting stats that are inflated with extra football games plus this passing era. Just stop it. And good for Dan Marino. He was awesome.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm just saying he has it rather than Burrow, or other quarterbacks, Tua. Like, Justin Herbert is setting some pretty insane paces and statistics, so you can kind of get the idea of the Chargers looking at this, or anybody looking at this and saying he's already one of the best quarterbacks ever. He's already one of the best quarterbacks out there. Pay the man. And so it's almost like they've determined already that he's at that level, and now Kellen Moore has been brought in to firmly unlock that. Like, the blame for that has been squarely placed on the previous coaches and offensive coordinators, whereas I think the view from this seat, anyway, I'm not going to speak for you, but the view from here is more, it probably is, but he might just be that way. Like, Herbert might actually skew a little bit more conservative than you would expect a guy with that arm and that ability to deliver ridiculous passes does. And that's why he's had this very low average depth of target. He's had the best turnover-worthy play rate in the NFL for 2 consecutive years. And we're expecting somebody like Kellen Moore to come in and try and unlock that last percentage of, optimal aggression. But maybe that isn't there to be unlocked.
I'm going to bring something up to because that's been my talking point for a while, the low average depth of target. I might try to bring a different angle to that in just a second and maybe even contradict myself. But first, what's on your family's summer bucket list? Maybe some traveling, going swimming, cookouts in the backyard. Something that should be on every parent's bucket list, though, is protecting your children through every season of life, no matter what. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it quick and easy to protect your family with a term life insurance policy so you can focus on the fun. Fabric was designed by parents for parents to help you get a high-quality, surprisingly affordable term life insurance policy in less than 10 minutes. Fabric has flexible policies that fit your family and your budget with quality policies like $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. Get your personalized quote in just minutes and then apply when it's convenient for you. It's all online and on your schedule. You can go from start to covered in less than 10 minutes with no health exam required. So join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. MEET fabric.com/PFFNFL. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Insurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. So what if the average depth of target, because it's all on a per play basis, what if it's more so the result of the Chargers play calling and just being a little bit more forward looking, pushing the run game aside a little bit more, replacing it with those shorter passes to set things up? I wonder if sometimes we focus from a player standpoint maybe too much on the per play when there are a certain number of plays that are kind of out of their control. So in other words, when Russell Wilson was at his best, he didn't have any of those gimmies, high completion percentage, screens, and they didn't work quick game or anything like that. But at the same time, he would look pretty in, statistically in all the yards per attempt and everything, because he was pretty much play action downfield passing, right, for Russell Wilson. If you took Russell Wilson back then and you said, okay, instead of hammering the ball into the defense on first down every single time, we're going to give you a little 4-yard pass here, 4-yard pass there, the per play metrics would look worse, but it might be better for the team, to replace some of those runs with passes. How much of that is Herbert's game The Chiefs do that well with Mahomes, and he still has incredible per-play metrics, whatever. But when you replace the run with the pass, is that going to affect your average depth of target? Is that going to affect your things? And are we unfairly calling Herbert conservative, where it might just be, again, they're replacing all of their 2nd and 10 runs. They're replacing a lot of those with the short passing game that we would say is a good thing, and that's going to affect the per-play stuff.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I think, generally speaking, we don't know collectively what the answer is to the balance of this. And
all that said, really quick, but I would rather see Herbert throw the ball down the field more, but it's not as simple as, hey, look at this number, and it's too low, make it higher. But there's definitely more aggressiveness to be had there.
Yeah, and it's not even necessarily the deep passes that are missing. His average depth of target is not necessarily an indication of he doesn't throw deep very often, because his percentage of deep passing, it's not high, but it's not, scarily low. It's the same as Kirk Cousins. It's slightly ahead of Patrick Mahomes. So that's not necessarily the metric that you're looking at to say this is problematic. And so this is the other thing is it feels a bit like the Russell Wilson dynamic in Seattle, where there was this agreed upon feeling for a few years that Russell Wilson is playing fantastically. He's great, but there's more to be had here. We are not currently hitting on all cylinders. We're not redlining this thing. There's a gap, right? There's an extra piece to be had here. And the feeling for ages was, well, this is Pete Carroll holding it back, right? The let Russ cook movement, all that kind of thing. And now that maybe has flipped 180 given what Russ did last year, but whatever. The point being, it felt for a while that there was a missing percentage of optimal play to be had with that Seattle offense and with Russell Wilson. That's where I think it feels like we are with Justin Herbert right now, which is he's playing fantastically. He's putting out those career statistics that Steve hates. There's a lot from the outside, everything looks great, right? But I think everybody seems to feel that we're missing just a little bit. There's a little bit further we could go till we hit the red line here. Maybe there isn't, though. Maybe this is actually... it's already firing as well as it fires. This is as good as it gets. He's got the best turnover-worthy play rate in the NFL for 2 straight years. He's the most careful quarterback with the football, whilst firing deep at an average level, whilst putting up, the most yards and second most touchdowns ever in the first 3 years. What are we complaining about? Maybe this is just it.
It is interesting looking at the grades for Herbert, how much of our perception of him was what happened the first 2 years, right? He had a 79 grade as a rookie. We were so impressed because he looked like a completely different quarterback than he was at Oregon. Gets into a new system. There was still a lot of limitations with the Chargers and their offense, but it was man, Herbert's doing some stuff, right? He is showing the special arm talent and not making the same mistakes, really, that he made in college. 90 grade in 2021, which included his rushing, but he falls back into a 78 last year. So the same question I think I've raised about Deshaun Watson, who has one elite grade in, say, 4 full seasons. Herbert's got 1 elite grade in 3 seasons, but it's really impressive that he's played this well in his first 3 years. Can he get back up to that elite production level? I think he has it in him, but yeah, I think it's still fair to say, is this what he is? Actually, on the Alex Smith spectrum of more conservative type of quarterbacks, in Alex Smith plus type of player, which is fine. But we've also seen quarterbacks be able to manipulate their aggressiveness. I always reference Stafford and Derek Carr at various points. I do think that there is more there to Herbert, and we'll see what happens now. It's his 3rd offensive system in 4 years, third offensive coordinator, if Kellen Moore can unlock that. But I think overall the Chargers should be thrilled with Herbert, his performance, what he's capable of. Now it's all right, go earn that money and go win some games and overcome these Chargers curses and jokes that we always make.
The next thing to come from that, though, is what it means for Joe Burrow's contract, because that's the next one up. Same draft class, a guy that clearly has earned the extension already in terms of what he's already done. I am fascinated because Burrow has been a quarterback that's actually made some noise about wanting to keep the guys around, wanting to keep the nucleus together, which from the outside presumably means not just him and Jamar Chase, but T. Higgins as well. Like, keep all those guys there. Can he do that whilst also beating Justin Herbert's contract, which would be Justin Herbert's a couple $1 million across the board ahead of Lamar Jackson's. The next one up would be Burrow, so that's your starting point, right? Here's our structure. Now just put a couple of extra numbers on top of that, and we're good. That's basically how that contract should work, unless there's something else at work there, which is Burrow deliberately saying, we need to keep T. Higgins and we need to keep Jamar Chase. If I need to take a couple million less to make that happen, then okay. So are we going to see the next contract in that sequence, or is he actually going to leave a little bit of money on the table to make that happen?
I think we're going to see the next contract in that sequence. And I also think there might be another year or two tacked on for Burrow. I think we might see a happy medium. I don't have any insight on
More
this.
of a Josh Allen type of contract.
I think it'll be closer to Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes than Justin Herbert. For a couple of reasons. This is me not having any inside info, but just kind of driving through town here, Sam. Joe Burrow, just to back up really quick. Remember Carson Palmer was giving interviews, and he's like, oh, Joe Burrow, he's kind of warning him. He's like, the Bengals might screw you over at some point. They don't like to spend. They got this reputation and everything. I think that's changed. I do think the Bengals see what they have, and just driving through town, there's an indoor practice facility now. The
bubble.
The bubble is like the bubble that Burrow built, right? I mean, if Andy Dalton was still the quarterback, they're still probably practicing outside. So I was over at the facility recently for whatever reason. I was over at the facility. The whole locker room's getting an overhaul.
Yeah,
they're building, they're expanding.
They put out some images, some renders, I think they're called, of all kinds of stuff the other day.
It feels different, right? So the Bengals, and they see the buzz around town and everything, and no disrespect to Carson Palmer or anything, but when Carson Palmer came in, they weren't knocking at the door. They had one really nice season. They weren't knocking at the door of a Super Bowl. I think the Bengals see the opportunity here. So again, no inside info on this or anything, but if Herbert's at 5 years and Allen and Mahomes are at 10, maybe Burrow's a 7-year guy that's going to have more, a higher APY than Herbert, but with that cap flexibility. Because I think, you mentioned what Burrow, so he wants to keep guys together. I think there's a world where they can keep Jamar Chase and T. Higgins together, and that they want to, and that's going to be their best bet to compete. And they see that they have to do this to compete with the Chiefs and the Bills and the Chargers and all these other teams here.
The interesting thing, we talked to Brad about this a while ago on the show, and Brad's essentially of the opinion that quarterbacks should never leave money on the table because there's a way for teams to get it done if they want to get it done. Yeah. Right? The salary cap is real. It's not like it's a fake thing that doesn't have to be factored in, but you can always make the moves happen that you want to make happen if you're willing to do it and if you're prepared to do it. And with the line of sight the Bengals have had on these three guys coming, they should be prepared for this at this point. So he's effectively saying that you leaving money on the table is just cutting a billionaire a break for no reason, right? If they want to keep T. Higgins, Joe Burrow, and Jamar Chase in the building, along with those offensive linemen, they can do it without Joe Burrow leaving $3 million on the table somewhere along the line. So that's definitely a perspective. I also think from Burrow's point of view, there's a huge sort of PR win in symbolically leaving $1 million or $2 on the table. If he just came in $1 million under Herbert and then put it out there Burrow's leaving money on the table to make sure that T. Higgins stays in the building. That guy's going to look like a god. He'll have the Tom Brady thing. For years, that's all we heard about Brady was that guy's leaving money on the table so that he can keep his slot receiver in the building. What a guy. What a quarterback.
Maybe to help with a starting linebacker.
Right. And it's always overblown, but that was a big thing about his reputation for a long period of time. If Burrow came out here, and you could even structure it in such a way where you actually end up getting more money, quickly or whatever, but you leave the overall number instead of 260, it's 258.
But that's the play too, right? Those guys have a brand that is going to make a ton of money elsewhere.
Sure.
And so your reputation, your brand, so to speak, there's a strategic move to your point. If we left a couple bucks on the table, there's a strategic move. Well, we're going to make it back in endorsements or whatever it is, or just public perception that's going to lead to endorsements, whatever it might be.
And you could potentially even have it with a higher guaranteed number anyway. So it's just the one number that's lower. And that's the one you put out saying, hey, look, he left money on the table. What a great guy.
That's one of those things that I was talking to a former cap guy from the NFL, and he's like, you need to know what agents want, because sometimes they just want that high APY number,
Right.
and it's actually leaving money on the table.
And it's actually helpful from the team.
Yeah, it's leaving guarantees.
We can
on
make
the
that number whatever you want.
Other people want, let me max cash, let me max the guarantee, but a lot of agents, and we see the way our media folks end up tweeting things out, what the agent wants out there is going to get tweeted out by insiders. And if you want to say, this is the highest contract, this is the highest APY, this is what that shows what the agent wants.
Most players and agents benefit from being able to say they're the highest paid guy in the NFL. But Burrow is one of the unusual situations where I actually think from a PR standpoint, he benefits from not being. Like he actually ends up looking better and being better, saying I could have been the highest paid player in the NFL, but I chose not to be, so that I can keep my receivers in the building. He just looks great if that happens.
Yeah. So I say it on almost every other show, but I'm fascinated by the Bengals team building effort, because I do believe, as much as we've talked about T. Higgins as a potential trade candidate, I do believe they'll pay the three big players, Burrow, Chase, and Higgins. They have the ability to stagger it in a certain way that, Higgins may have a huge cap number one year, and then it's Chase the next year. You can manipulate all of those things. But at the same point, it's like, it's football. It's more than just three players. So all of those teams have to make those decisions. When you have Allen, you have Burrow, you have Herbert, you have Mahomes, what's the best deployment of the second to fifth best, highest salaries on your team? What's the combo? Like in Kansas City, it's probably going to be Chris Jones because they have access to a Chris Jones. In Cincinnati, having it as two wide receivers, I mean, if on paper, I would love for my highest paid players to be my quarterback and then two pass catchers that I trust. I believe that's how you win, and then you figure out everything else. The Bengals have that opportunity. The Chargers don't necessarily have that just yet. The Bills have Stephon Diggs, but they don't have. The Bengals might have this advantage to have players 2 and 3 to be their pass catchers, so that they always have that stability around Joe Burrow.
All right, who else got paid?
Andrew Thomas this morning. Trevon Diggs. Where do you want to go? Start with Trevon Diggs?
If you like.
Yesterday. Trevon Diggs, Cowboys.
Yeah.
He tweeted at me recently for something. He said I've been quiet.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Calling you out?
Yeah, I ignored it.
Oh.
That's
not fun. You got to engage. That engagement's the name of the game. You got to get
mad. I just tweeted out an innocent stat at the end of the 2021 season that he'd given up over 1,000 yards in coverage.
Yeah.
Which is a milestone, which is good.
It's a milestone.
And that was before the 17th game.
It
was before the 17th game.
So it counts.
Yes.
Okay.
I made sure not to, not to do counting stats in a 17-game schedule and be like, I've never seen this before in my life, like everyone else does.
He also tweeted, so the main Twitter account tweeted something recently. Or what's it's not tweeted anymore. What is it? What's the verb?
We'll stick with tweeted.
Okay. They tweeted
not saying
with an X.
Something.
Well, so apparently they're supposed to be called like X's now, but I don't know what the verb is. What is like 2X?
X'd it.
He X'd it? God, I don't want that to be a thing. Anyway.
Did they workshop all of these?
They put something out into the social media ether that had Trevon Diggs, I forget who was next to, Slay maybe, but another corner who was good. And they had all their statistics, and one of them at the bottom was like number of open targets allowed, right? And Diggs quote X'd that and was like, what the hell is that? What even is an open target allowed? And I think the general consensus was, again, like you, it's best to ignore it. Let's not engage. Let's not feed the trolls. Whereas it would have been much funnier if they'd simply replied with a large image of him like trailing behind a receiver who was wide open, being like, one of these. Yeah. And you had 50 of them.
It's when a receiver's open.
Yeah. So I was just looking. PFF grade at corner over the last 3 years. He ranks 38th.
Yeah.
That's not great. He has allowed the most yardage of all corners in the last 3 years.
Come on, man. Stop being so negative.
I'm not. I'm just simply reading out some statistics. He also has the most interceptions of any corner in the last 3 years. Tied, by the way, with Xavier Howard, who's also second in yardage allowed. So we're talking, these are some similar players.
They're very similar.
High variance, volatile, boom or bust type corners. And actually, so Xavier Howard has 17 interceptions, tied with Trevon Diggs over the last 3 years, including the playoffs. He also has 8 dropped picks. Diggs only has 2 of those. So Howard has been in position to pick off 25 passes over the last 3 years and has come up with 17 of them.
Xavier Howard's very good at getting to the ball, for sure.
Diggs has been in position to pick off 19 and has picked off 17 of them. Diggs might have the best hands of any corner in the NFL. I'll say that for him. Like, if the ball gets to his hands, he's probably coming up with it. And you can't say that about every corner in the league. What was fascinating to me recently, we did this whole Trevon Diggs dance way back when he had the 11 picks and the 1,000-yard season and blah, blah, blah. And you made the point that he would probably be a better corner the next year without anything like the number of interceptions. And that's exactly what happened. What I didn't realize until looking at it, relatively recently, was quite how extreme those numbers were in terms of the picks. Like, he has 11 interceptions that 1 year. Crazy. And then he has 3 in each of the other years, which is not even, it's a nothing number, right? It's the number you expect most cornerbacks to come out of a season with.
If you play 1,000 snaps, you'll
right. It's about average,
yeah.
Right? So it's not even like, that year, that one season with the 11 interceptions has like established his reputation as he's this ball hawk corner where if you test him, you got to be careful because the ball's going to get picked off. He's going to go get it. And he does that a lot, but it's not like it's happened in any of the other seasons. It's that 1 year. And then the other 2 seasons is like, yeah, okay, he might be dangerous, but it's only resulted in 3 picks the other 2 years. So how dangerous is it? Like, it might be dangerous. On the other hand, he gave up 760 yards this year and 650 the first year. So it's probably still worth taking a crack at him,
Yeah, I think there's a lot of nuance to all of this stuff. Thank you for, putting that out there. When my statements on the 11 interception season, right? Like he'll right. Probably get better and he won't get as much publicity. When we talk about level of play and value, again, there's a difference between like, is the interception really valuable for the team? Yes, it's awesome for the team, but can you bank on that going forward? Obviously, the Cowboys could not. They could not go into the 2022 season last year and be like, well, we know Diggs is going to get his 8 picks, so we're good with that. He got 3. So next year, he'll probably revert back to 6 or 7 if he stays healthy. I think the things that are in his favor, Trevon Diggs, he's never really had a good cornerback opposite him in Dallas. Sure. It's been a revolving door of injuries and poor play, and now Stephon Gilmore's there. But that also brings up some of the perspective. As I was digging through Diggs' numbers, like where does he succeed other than just saying he gets his hands on a lot of footballs, even if it was saturated in one season? Diggs does his best work in zone coverages and playing with his eyes on the football where he can go be a ball hawk and make plays. But when you look at him in man coverage, including all off the ball assignment when he's not targeted and everything, he does allow separation. He does get beaten at times. So for perspective, NFL corners when they're playing man, the average grade is like in the 50s, right? It's not great. It's a challenging role. And he's about 40. He's about average to below average in man coverage. But new teammate Stephon Gilmore, even though he's getting older, grades in the 80s over the last couple of years in man coverage, even in his early 30s.
Right.
So it just kind of shows this perspective. It's not like Diggs is playing lockdown football, and when you do, like, it's not Darrelle Revis where it's lockdown at all times. And by the way, if you target him, it's turning around the other way. There is boom or bust to this. Xavier Howard, I think, is the perfect comp.
Yeah.
And in our 10 plus years at PFF, when we get into discussions with fan bases or when we try to explain grades versus stats and everything, the big ones are always sack totals, right, for linemen, and then interception totals. The things that are just a handful of plays over a year when we're focused on the hundreds or 1,000. And Diggs is, I think he's a good corner. I think he's fine. Last year he was a top 25 most valuable corner. I think he's fine.
Xavier Howard,
but he might actually. But all that said, he might be even better with Stephon Gilmore here, where he might have be able to take even more chances.
Corner's really tricky because those interceptions are worth so much, but they're so incredibly luck-driven or variance-driven or fortune. However you want to describe that, it's not necessarily a controllable, repeatable skill. And there are very few corners in the NFL that can consistently, year on year, exceed the average number of interceptions, right? They don't tend to happen. So Xavier Howard is another corner who, like Diggs, has had that 1 year where he had like double-digit picks, right? And we're like, wow, this is insane. 10 interceptions back in 2020. Never did that again. But unlike Diggs, he's had a couple of other seasons where he's had a 7 interception season in 2018. He had a 5-pick season in 2021. But he's also had 2 1-pick seasons. Last year he only had 2. Like it's a hugely variance-driven type of thing. But for him, that shakes out to over the last 3 years, he's had joint top. So what's fascinating to me with Diggs is over his career so far, he is the second worst cornerback in the NFL in yards per coverage snap allowed, right? 1.5 yards per coverage snap. So every single snap he's out there on a passing play, the offense is effectively moving forward 1.5 yards. That's not great, right? But you look at passer rating allowed when targeted, and he's in the top 20, right? And that's a stat like EPA, which is driven massively by interceptions, which we know for Diggs is driven massively by 1 year. So to the real question for him in terms of will he justify this deal going forward is, what does that baseline end up shaking out to be over that period of time? It's not even like generally, or is it even a fair measure? It's simply, in order for him to justify that, he needs to catch a high end of the variance at some point again. If he doesn't, if he goes like 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, he won't justify that contract.
I think it's okay to expect him to do that, though, because it's not only great.
Well, because the hands thing that we mentioned earlier is real.
I was going to say
he is a good receiver. He will catch the football if it's possible to do. It's just that his opportunities to do that is massively luck driven. It's not in his control necessarily.
That's why I was going to say the traits are there. Like that's where like the traits aspect of it mattered. The same way when Xavier Howard came out and we described him, we're like, man, some plays he looks like Richard Sherman, other plays he looks like a bad Big 12 corner. But when you get the high end of variance from Xavier Howard, you have big seasons, and we've seen that. I do think we talk a lot from a team building standpoint, kind of chasing that high end of variance. We talk about, if you're trying to win a Super Bowl, take chances and draft more quarterbacks and everything. I think there's something to the Dallas Cowboys investing in a corner that has a high end of variance. Now they have a Stephon Gilmore on the other side who could still cover. Diggs might get targeted a few more times. And I think it's okay for Dallas to say we have a good offense and we'll make up for the yards and points that we give up just to get the ball back a few extra times. I think it kind of makes sense for Dallas in where their team is over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think it's a gamble that makes sense. The other thing is, if he does catch another one of those years where he gets, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever, interceptions, that's the kind of thing that can create, the 2009 New Orleans Saints Super Bowl team, where that was not a particularly good defense, and then that 1 year they led the NFL in turnovers, right? Like if Diggs has a year where instead of 3 picks, he gets 10 again, those 7 picks can be the difference between this Dallas defense being good, which it already is, and being like absolutely dominant, right? It absolutely murders teams because it's turning the ball over more. That's the kind of variance that's, I think, worth, particularly for a team like Dallas that's in this world of like banging their head against this glass ceiling and not being able to take that next step. If they just catch that one good year from him, it's worth it, right? Even if it doesn't. Like, even if the 5-year average ends up being a net negative or a net, not worth the contract, the 1 year could end up producing a Super Bowl for them. So I get it. I'm not even necessarily against it. I'm just trying to articulate the risk involved or the reality involved of what type of player he is. It's very different than giving that kind of money to a Patrick Surtain type of corner who is, a much more stable down-to-down corner, but probably is never going to have that kind of year that Diggs had.
I think that's fair, man. It reminds me a little bit of Stafford at quarterback, where with Stafford, I use the phrase all the time, in his era, he's barely top 10 because of all the other quarterbacks that were in his era. But if you catch the high end of Stafford, there were 3 games a year where Stafford looked like the best quarterback in the league, and the Rams ran that into a championship where they hit the high end of Stafford variance and put him in the right position, and they win a Super Bowl with that. Trevon Diggs is similar to that, where if you're making a best cornerbacks list, I don't know if he cracks the top 10, and that's okay. There might be a season, though, where you get a bunch of interceptions and you wouldn't take many corners besides him because of what he brings in the turnover department.
Because turnovers are so important and remain so important. Like, there's a difference between them being important and being something you can sort of deliberately try and focus on. Like, it's not necessarily, I think, logically, you would say, well, these are the most important plays in the game, so let's focus everything on making sure we can maximize these from a defensive point of view. I don't think it necessarily holds that you can do that. But corner might be the one position outside of quarterback where you can bet on the streak. Like the Rams did that with Stafford. They already had a good team. They were like, we bring in Stafford because if he catches that streak at the right time, which is basically what happened. Like, let's remember that season, as crazy as Stafford's numbers were, he wasn't playing that great, and then he played better in the playoffs, and that's what won them the ring. And if he didn't
high end of variance, man.
Right.
You're chasing that high end.
If he just played at the same level as he played in the regular season, they probably don't win that championship. But they bet on the streak. They were like, we bring in Stafford because if he catches that streak at the right time, we're unstoppable. Corner might be the only other position in the NFL where I think it makes some sense to take that bet. Like, this guy, he's massively high variance. He's volatile. He's boom or bust. But if you catch the streak, our defense it jumps 10 spots higher in like defensive rankings because all those numbers that everyone was using to defend Diggs or to pump him up during that season, the EPA per play, the EPA when targeted, all those kinds of things, they all skyrocket when you get 5 more interceptions. So if you take a gamble that this guy has the traits to have a 10-pick season, let's roll the dice on that.
The people who are throwing EPA per target or whatever they were throwing at us, that is that's being fake smart.
I mean, it's all the same number.
That's being fake smart. There's too many. Like, there's a lot of people, maybe even in football Twitter right now, I think are fake smart just because you used a new stat, and it's like, okay, that stat is completely dependent on the receiver dropped the ball into Diggs' hands, Leonard Fournette, right? This happened to be a terrible throw that was right at you. It's a stat, and all cornerback production metrics are stats that are dependent on bad offense for a lot of the time, or they get skewed heavily by bad offense.
I don't mind people bringing it up, right? What I mind is people, like, you have this thing, you've mentioned it for years, the idea of double counting.
Yeah.
Like, count it once, make the point, that's fine, but you can't double count it or triple count. Like, people come up with 5 different numbers to say, well, look at his coverage. It's all the same number, right? It's essentially passer rating into his coverage, which is EPA adjusted for situation. It's all driven. The entire thing is simply number of interceptions. That's the number.
And by the way, you've said this a lot. Like, EPA is just passer rating using whatever, some weighting. It does passer rating misses sacks, right?
Sure.
So that's the big thing. Like, EPA is it's smarter than passer rating.
Yeah.
But for a corner,
It's
it
the
doesn't
same
matter.
number.
There are no sacks when you're targeting a corner.
So every one of these numbers is just the number of interceptions he had projected out over a statistical landscape.
Passer rating is fine for a corner because you don't need to account for sacks, and it's probably in the ballpark when it comes to game situations.
If you're showing a table, right, and those sort of side-by-side tables where it's like bold or in green when a guy's better, and like the 3 ways he's better are interceptions, passer rating allowed, and EPA when targeted. It's all the same number. That's one you get. 1 in your plus column, not 3. It's the same data point.
See, you're not fake smart. Right. You're real smart.
And that data point is fine. It's valid, right? Like, there is absolutely a legitimate argument to say he gave up 1,000 yards, and that is offset by the fact that he picked the pass off 11 times. Like, that ends up being more valuable to your team than a dude who gave up 400 and never got his hands on the football. That's a completely valid argument to have, right? The counter to that is obviously, but this guy's thing is more repeatable. Like, you can do that every year. You can't necessarily do that every year, and that's where, and that is a legitimate debate as to, but if we get it in the 1 year and that's the good year, we win a championship and that's all we're chasing. So it's fine. Like, that is a legitimate argument and discussion to have, but you need to understand what the argument is. You can't simply say, but like 15 different ways he wins when it's all hinged off that one data point, which is luck driven.
Yeah, even if you're looking at the interceptions, we're not saying, would you rather have this or that? We're saying, what are the leading indicators for those 11 interceptions, and can you ever actually predict those again? Do you want to get in on the fantasy action but sick of managing your roster? Sick of player injuries ending your season? Well, with Best Ball on DraftKings, you get the best of your team all season long. This year, Best Ball on DraftKings is bigger than ever with $10 million in guaranteed cash prizes up for grabs. For a limited time, you could join DraftKings' largest Best Ball contest ever and get your first entry back in DraftKings dollars as soon as the draft is finished. Act now before this offer expires. You can start playing Best Ball. Download the DraftKings app using the code PFF. Enter the DraftKings Best Ball Millionaire Contest and snake draft your team for the season. Each week, you'll automatically rack up points from all your top scorers. No ads, no drops, no trades, no I should have played him instead. Teams with the most points by the end of the season will have a shot to take home the $1 million top prize. So what are you waiting for? Head to the DraftKings app right now, sign up with the code PFF, and start playing Best Ball today. Join the DraftKings $10 million Best Ball tournament, and you'll get your first entry back in DraftKings dollars only on DraftKings with the code PFF. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. One per customer. Opt-in required with $10 entry fee. Bonus issued as 10 DK dollars. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com/promotions for details. Ends August 9th, 2023. All right, what else do we have here? Tackles.
Andrew Thomas?
Andrew Thomas and Tytus Howard, both signing today. Andrew Thomas, of course, a bigger name. He's going to sign a 5-year, $117 million extension to go on top of. He's heading into year 4, his 5th-year option, but they're extending him another 5 years, so he'll be in New York for at least another 7 seasons, according to this contract.
Yeah.
Andrew Thomas, what a story. We've talked about him a ton here, right? Number 4 overall pick, 2020 draft, Dave Gettleman. His players, the players that Dave Gettleman signed.
Ironically, probably contributed to Dave Gettleman being fired and then ends up being maybe his best pick.
Well, his last 3 first-round picks, Daniel Jones, Dexter Lawrence, and Andrew Thomas.
He drafted Saquon as well, right? So Saquon in the same year as...
Can I finish my sentence?
Sorry.
His last 3 first-round picks.
Correct. They were his last 3.
Have all been extended.
Yes. Well,
now his the fourth one, Saquon Barkley, was not really extended.
I mean, is that technically an extension? He wasn't under
throwing
contract
$1 million on top of his franchise tag.
Not even necessarily. He wasn't even. No, but he hadn't signed the franchise tag, so technically he wasn't under contract. Therefore, it is an extension.
How about a long-term extension? 3 long-term extensions and 3 picks. The 2020 tackle class: Andrew Thomas, Jedrick Wills, Tristan Wirfs,
but even
Mekhi Becton. And one other. Missing someone else.
Wirfs, Thomas, Jedrick Wills, Mekhi Becton.
Right? Wasn't there another one?
Yeah. Austin.
Oh, he doesn't count. Those were the big 4.
It's just the big 4, right?
And then
the 5th
good
one.
The Dolphins guy should never have been in the first round.
There wasn't the 5th good one, right? It was just those.
Yeah, the debate was about those 4. Some people had Mekhi Becton number 1, Tristan Wirfs, Jedrick Wills. We did have Andrew Thomas number 1, I think, on our tackle board.
We did.
Yeah.
But even so, the Gettleman thing again, like Daniel Jones, a new regime has determined that he's the future of some description, given him that 4-year contract, right? So it's hard to crap on that too much as a draft pick. Dexter Lawrence looks like one of the best interior defenders in the NFL right now. Andrew Thomas now looks like one of the best left tackles in the NFL right now. And you've got Saquon, who people were out here forming like a union for because he was so criminally under-respected by the franchise tag as an offer. Maybe Gettleman didn't do too bad.
I mean, the issue with Gettleman was less about player selection and more about process and, picking the running back at 2 was a big one. But yeah, you're right. Maybe he did take a little bit too much
even then,
when it comes to the player selection.
Even then, the alternative was, Sam Darnold.
I get it. Or Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Depends on which way you go. Anyway, Andrew Thomas started his career with just a rough stretch. Really the first 7 or 8 weeks of the season. Had a 62 grade as a rookie, jumped up to 79 in his second year. Last year, 90 grade. And as our friend Adam Schefter tweeted, the most valuable offensive tackle in the NFL last year using PFF WAR. Tweeted out the grades over the last 2 years. It's Trent Williams in his own ballpark with a 96-plus grade, but Andrew Thomas, number 2 highest grade among all tackles over the last 2 seasons. So he has become one of the most dependable, one of the better pass blockers. And the thing I always liked about him coming out of Georgia, I think scheme diverse when it comes to the run game, and he's just been I thought he was the best all-around tackle coming out. Tristan Wirfs has been right up there with him, if not maybe a tick better over the 3 years, but Thomas establishing himself as one of the best tackles in the league and getting paid for it.
Yeah, I mean, Thomas has been fantastic. I think it's a really good player to lock up long term. That's an interesting contract, like the length of that for him to agree to that number of years to be locked down is pretty intriguing. But
still just 24 years old.
Yeah, so but that's gonna. He basically misses out on that next, the third contract of huge money. Like he'll maybe get one if he's still kind of playing at an amazing level at that point, which is happening more and more. 32 or whatever is not, like offensive tackles are still playing very well at that level. You can still get a good contract at that point. But the difference, I think, between hitting the open market again as a free agent at 30 versus 32 is probably still pretty significant for a tackle. But anyway, he's voluntarily left that on the table and is signed for this big extension. But he's become, I think, one of the best tackles in the NFL. His footwork is insane. His movement skills are incredible. He's got amazing strength. Like, he's pretty much as good as it gets right now. So great deal for the Giants and a great validation, like a culmination of the arc for Andrew Thomas himself, where we were pushing for him to be the top tackle in that draft. A lot of people liked other people. He goes as the first tackle, and then midway through that first year, people are ridiculing that draft pick. They're like, this is ridiculous. Wirfs is over here looking like a star, like all the other guys doing well, and he looks like crap because they rebuilt his pass sets on the fly, like during that rookie year. And then he's just gotten better every single season and now looks as good as it gets.
Just for some other perspective here, the other tackles making over $20 million a year, Trent Williams, well worth it. He's the best tackle in the NFL. But then you have guys like David Bakhtiari, who's been battling injuries these last couple of years. You have Laramie Tunsil, who the PFF grades really like from a pass blocking standpoint, not as much from a run blocking standpoint. So there's a little bit of a disconnect in that skill set. I think Tunsil's a top 3 to 5 pass blocker, though. And then Lane Johnson, who's, when healthy, one of the best all-around tackles. And then Jawan Taylor jumped up into that mix this offseason with the Chiefs, similar to what I just described with Tunsil, maybe more of a pass blocker than a run blocker from a production standpoint. But I think Thomas is right up there, again, the same thing he showed at Georgia, as far as the balance between you trust him in pass protection, versatility in the run game. He doesn't have the one-sided grading profile that some of the other tackles have. So I think Thomas is poised to be one of the better all-around tackles in the league.
Thomas and Christian Darrisaw remind me of each other a little bit in terms of, I think they're both very balanced and they're both incredibly nimble, good footwork. They have that mix of athleticism, movement skills, and strength with some, with technique in there as well. That means that they're good at everything right now. And, Thomas is a little bit ahead of Darrisaw in terms of that development and that arc and the consistency. But like those two guys might be the next two really good all-around offensive tackles.
All right, so the other deal was Tytus Howard. Slightly different story for Tytus Howard, but it's a common one for offensive linemen. He was a first-round pick for the Texans. He had a slow start to his career, but not just his first half season, basically his first 2 to 3 seasons. Moved around, played some guard, but he gets a 3-year, $56 million deal for the Texans, but he's coming off of his best year, which was the 4th year of his career. This is something we do see. So he's not making Andrew Thomas money or anything like that, but he's making starting tackle money, similar to, say, an Andre Dillard. It's a little bit more than an Andre Dillard got with the Eagles. Starting tackle money for Tytus Howard. And again, using PFF WAR, he was a top 32 tackle last year. He was a starting caliber tackle last year, but it took him 4 years to get there. So you're paying him now for what he's going to do in the future, probably be a league average to slightly above average tackle, which, the going rate for that is pretty high.
But critically, has always been a better pass blocker than a run blocker. And if you're the Houston Texans right now and you're focused on, okay, we just put all our eggs in this C.J. Stroud basket, how do we make sure that he's as good as humanly possible? You want to lock up guaranteed commodities when it comes to pass blocking and keeping him upright. You also are pivoting to this offense, under PFF Bobby, who's no longer dead to us, by the way. He replied.
He did.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean he's going to be on the show anytime soon, but maybe.
You know what? So he countered our offer. I don't even care if I'm betraying confidences right now. We were like, how do we get you on the podcast? Now you got to do media and stuff. He was like, I tell you what, if I ever somehow become a head coach, then I'll come on. I'm like, well, all right, fine. We need to kind of make sure that we're the first place he goes on.
Got to be first.
We can't be like, all right, now I'm a head coach. Sit tight while I do 50. I got to talk to ESPN for a while.
We'll be on McAfee first and all.
Yeah, we got to make sure that we're the initial exclusive. Anyway, You're pivoting to this new offense, PFF Bobby, which we know helps the run blocking performance it helps the performance period of offensive linemen. But it should help the run blocking stuff as well. So
tackle friendly system even.
Yeah. Let's focus on the pass blocking. We know he's okay. He's solid at that. He's pretty good at that. Run blocking has been an issue outside of last year. We think that'll get better anyway within this offense, as will probably the pass blocking. So, it makes sense. I think locking up that offensive line for Houston is big, knowing what they have, invested in C.J. Stroud.
So that's what they've done this offseason. They extended Laramie Tunsil at left tackle. Shaq Mason, they got him from the Tampa Bay Bucks, and they've extended him for a couple of years. So now you have 3/5 of the offensive line locked up for the next 4 years, basically, in Houston. The other two spots, you have year 2 of Kenyon Green. He had a rough rookie season, but he was a first-round pick, and again, we know sometimes takes time for the offensive lineman. Juice Scruggs, a rookie center, projected to be the starter right now. Kind of reminds me of what they had in Kansas City, where there'll be a couple big investments and then young players sprinkled in. It's a nice mix in Houston with 3 long-term deals out of their 5 offensive line spots. So I think when you look at Tytus Howard, you look at the career grades, they've gotten better. And I think the interpretation there is when a guy takes that jump in year 4, I think you could say, all right, this is I think it's fair to expect that baseline more than reverting back to what he was as a rookie or in his second year. And last year he was a high 60s graded player. If that jumps up into the low 70s and he's making $14 million a year, I think that's, 16, 18 million a year. That's the going rate for starting tackles. So.
No, I think it's good moves across the board for Houston.
All right, any other? Oh, we got to talk about this big news. Jimmy Graham is back.
Yeah.
With the Saints.
For a 1-year deal, not a 1-day deal.
Yeah.
Everybody thought it was a 1-day deal.
You saw the he's back tweets and
everyone's like, oh, look, Jimmy Graham signing for his 1-day retirement deal. No, he's apparently playing this year, or at least, wants to give it a shot.
Yeah, it's interesting. Back to the Saints.
Yeah.
Haven't seen him since 2021 with the Bears. Only played 274 snaps. I will say, the last time Jimmy Graham graded well was 2016. You could say 2017 with the Seahawks. He had a couple years with the Packers grading below 60. He has not he has not had a full season grading above 65 since 2017 with Seattle. And that was a drop off from where he was basically the rest of his career with the Saints. The one thing I will say though, with Graham, with a guy like a big tight end like a Graham, or like what we saw with Gronk, you see them lose a step. But Gronk sat out a year, came back, took him a little time to get his legs under him, but then the explosiveness reverted back a little bit. If you could get that, maybe the year of rest helps a little bit with Graham. Because why do guys regress? They lose a step. They lose explosiveness. They lose some of it. Perhaps the year of rest. And here's the other thing. Could you just use him as a red zone weapon? Jimmy Graham at this point in his career, who cares if he becomes a 3-down player or doesn't be a 90-catch guy? What if he's just a red zone player? I'm just interested to see if he has anything left, if he's got a little bit of explosiveness back, because you could see him losing steps as he got older.
Yeah.
And does he become just a specialist for the Saints? Because he does have great ball skills and size.
That's what we thought would happen, and it didn't. We thought, minimum, you're still going to be this phenomenal red zone target late in the career.
I know, and he hasn't been.
Honestly, I'm looking now. I can't find anything that even hints at how much money is involved, and specifically how much guaranteed money is involved, because I think there's probably a better chance, absent any information of the contract whatsoever, I would say right now there's a better chance he doesn't make the 53 than there is he has any kind of meaningful contribution this season. Now, if it turns out he actually signed a $7 million deal and 5 of it's guaranteed, I might adjust that expectation a little bit. But everything out there at the moment simply says a 1-year contract with no information whatsoever as to the financials. So I'm still saying there's no chance.
You have Jawan Johnson at tight end, who just had a breakout season last year. You have Foster Moreau, who they brought in this offseason. You have Taysom Hill, if you want to call him potentially a tight end for the Saints. Jesse James is on the roster. Okay, so those top 3, though, Jawan Johnson, Foster Moreau, and whatever Taysom Hill is, those are the guys that are potentially keeping him off the roster. You might keep Jimmy Graham as a tight end 3, tight end 4, and chuck up some jump balls. I don't know. Is that worth a roster spot? Potentially.
Like I say, I don't think it'll happen.
We don't need to spend too much time on it, but it was
It's
fun.
fine kicking the tires on him. Like, let's see what he has in camp. But at the moment, I'm working on the basis that I don't necessarily anticipate him getting out of training camp.
All right, and then we wanted to do a section on
so quickly, let's just put a bow on the Saquon Barkley thing, because he signed since we last talked about this, which was Monday. And I think the only thing to say about it really is it just illustrates how little leverage running backs had, that he signed for basically nothing additionally on the franchise tag.
Yeah.
The franchise tag is an insult to me, good sir. Slap him across the face with the glove. And it's like, well, what if we moved $2 million of the money to a signing bonus so you get it now instead of in a month? And we'll give you $900,000 in incentives, which there seems to be conflicting information on these. Are the incentives are tied to 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns, whatever it was. Are they also tied to them making the playoffs? They need both to happen?
I don't know, because there's not that many incentives. It's only up to $1 million, right?
Yes. So potentially,
there was one report that said it was tied to the playoffs.
Yeah, right. One report said it was one incentive for 1,300 yards, one for 10 touchdowns, one for 65 catches or something. And then the other report was they're tied to the Giants making the playoffs. Now, I don't know if that's 2 separate pieces of information, only one of which is true, or if that's those combined are the incentive. In order to make the $900K, he needs to do those 3 things and the Giants make the playoffs, of which point I would say there's very minimal chance of him making that money. Anyway, point being, he got almost nothing out of this. And it's not like he didn't give up something, because he has to show up to camp now instead of showing up to week 1 game in a month's time. Whatever negotiation there was, he lost, and lost hard. So this running back union, let's go on strike, let's get the more, it's not going to happen. They have no leverage. They will continue to get screwed until something systemic changes down the line, if indeed that ever happens. That's my only thought.
Did you guys come up with any good answers? I didn't get to listen to all of the running back content you guys were churning out there.
Not really. I mean, the only suggestion I've seen that makes any sense whatsoever is, to me, the fundamental problem is running backs peak at a younger age than any other position, right? So the issue is, by the time they reach this second contract in the NFL, they may already be declining in a way that simply isn't true for every other position, right? But that means that a lot of their peak is being spent playing essentially for free in the college landscape. Now, some of that's being fixed by NIL, which I think is actually potentially the biggest non-intended fix to all of this is, look, they're getting paid now at the college level. Just leave them there. Don't rush to the NFL where you're going to grind out. Stay as the superstar for South Carolina and earn a ton of money a year in NIL. Don't worry about it. But
why are you going to call out Marcus Lattimore like that?
Oh, it wasn't. It was just the first school that came to my mind. Anyway, if you're going to fix anything, running backs peak earlier, so let them come to the NFL earlier. Why did Adrian Peterson have to spend 3 years at Oklahoma?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. That would be cool. That would be interesting to see.
But anything else requires a position-specific carve-out, which I just don't think is ever going to happen at the CBA level, because the NFLPA can't argue for it.
Look, I made the point a couple shows ago. The NFLPA has not made their focus salaries. They've made it health. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying that's where the CBA focus has been. It has not been maximizing every dollar. It has not been overhauling the franchise tag and saving the rush linebackers from being called linebackers, and all. They have not tried to maximize every dollar through the CBA.
But it's because
they've tried to redistribute the income a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think they also ran into all sorts of unintended consequences. They wanted to make the veterans get paid more and cut the rookie salaries, and all the NFL started doing is saying, okay, 8-year veteran, I don't want to pay you more. I can get a rookie to do this better. So I don't think they do a great job of having foresight when it comes to finances as far as the NFLPA goes.
I made this point.
And it also hasn't been their main focus.
Yeah, I made this point on Monday. I think that they're just in too difficult a situation. Like, the reason it looks like the NFLPA loses every negotiation with the NFL is because the NFL has a very easy position. It's like we have 32 people we're representing, and all of them more or less are in exactly the same situation. So we can all align on like the 5 things we want in the correct order and simply negotiate that, right? The NFLPA is sitting here. Number one, we've got thousands of people that we're supposedly representing, and that results in hundreds of different like wants and requirements and needs and blah, blah, blah. So that list for the NFL, which is like number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in order, is like 700 things long for the NFLPA, and they can't agree on the order because there's so many different like interests pulling it one way or the other. So they get to the table and just get railroaded because like it's easier for the NFL. So that's why I just can't ever see, running backs are getting screwed. Great. Take a number. We'll get to you later. Like, it's just not going to happen.
Oh, yeah. The NFLPA is not going to take up the running back's cause. And again, just I think to reiterate how we got here, I think there's a lot of reasons, but I don't think that the NFL just recently became a quarterback-driven league. They've always been a quarterback-driven league. And then in the last 10 to 15 years, they've also made it much easier to pass. So they've made it less desirable to run through rule changes. So the league, there was a reason why Joe Montana won a ton of Super Bowls. There's a reason why a lot of the best quarterbacks of all time won a bunch of Super Bowls or won a lot of games. It's always been a QB-driven league, even if Emmitt Smith was getting 30 handoffs a game in Dallas. But it's become even more of a QB-driven game, but more importantly, just more of a passing game. So it is less desirable to hand the ball off 20 to 25 times to a running back, in part, I think half because the league is smarter from a X's and O's standpoint. They realize passing is better. But then the league, the NFL, made it so that passing was that much more valuable. So they've expanded the difference between passing and running. So that's why we're here. That's why there's no like answer to this. It's not just, we pay running backs more. What, you just can't. Like everything's working against them at this point.
Yeah.
The NIL thing is interesting because they're not making NFL type money. But remember a few years ago, everybody said get to the NFL as soon as possible so you can get to the second contract. Right. And now you're not in a rush to get to the second contract. You might be in a rush to just get to a rookie contract because it's better than NIL.
Yeah.
But still, you're not rushing to the NFL. So I want to know if players are going to – and running backs are valuable in college.
Yeah.
Right? They're very valuable in college. Like if Bijan Robinson went back to Texas this year, he might be the difference between them winning a national title or not. He was that good, is that good, and they're that valuable at the NFL, at the college level.
And also, by the way, like NIL is only just getting started. Like some of the money being talked about, and that's a little bit – under a veil still. It's not necessarily all public and all that kind of stuff. But you're hearing like guys like Arch Manning are already worth like $5+ million a year in NIL money. And that dude's sitting on a bench somewhere. Like he's not even playing. So, and there are a lot of teams or a lot of running backs on teams in cities that do not have NFL teams. Like you're not competing for the endorsement dollars with proven NFL commodities or NFL superstars. You have your market, whatever it is, and it can be a pretty big market sometimes, to yourself, effectively. So I think there's a lot of capacity for these guys to earn a lot of money via NIL, and there's definitely a point where if you're a running back, you're going to be looking at this and saying, why would I come out now? Like, what is the extra year in the NFL doing for me? It's not earning me more money early, and it's not necessarily earning me more money ever because we're not seeing these second contracts. So I'm just going to stay here and earn money.
That might be the answer, though, because fantasy football is still huge. Running backs are still a huge part of fantasy football. It might be you're gonna make your money through other avenues,
right,
through more endorsements and pushing that a little bit further than maybe the NFL component. I don't know. Either way, I think there's an overreaction to like, kids, don't let your parents, don't let your kids play running back. And, if you're a college player, do you choose this position versus that? We focus so much on like the top end of the market. There's still plenty of money to be made relative to not playing professional football. There's still college scholarships. There's NIL. Like there's still all these other opportunities. It's the guys that are in the NFL that are stars relative to their position, though, that are getting screwed out of the money relative to other position groups, basically.
The biggest group that got screwed are the guys that showed up before NIL existed and didn't reach the level of success in the NFL to make the big second-year contract. Like Philip Lindsay is held up as, the poster child of a dude that got hosed. That guy made no money in college, and then was an undrafted free agent, so didn't make anything on his rookie contract, had, back-to-back years of 1,000 yards in the NFL, like shocked people, and then the league decided he couldn't play anymore and basically ran him out. So he's made a total of like, $1 million or $2 million, I forget what the number is, like $2 million, let's say, for his success, which, like, he was a star for a brief period of time. But that guy made almost nothing, right? That, in terms of getting screwed relative to, like, Saquon Barkley, who just, signed a $10 million deal for this year. It's not even in the same ballpark. And now the next Saquon Barkley will have done that having gone through an NIL run of college career where he was getting paid as well. It's a very narrow band of guys who really got hosed. Everyone else, we're just in a world where you're earning a little bit less money now. And some of the money's going to corners and wide receivers and quarterbacks. Yeah. And is Austin Eckler underpaid relative to what he does on an NFL field? Probably. Like on a personal level. Is he still getting paid? Like, do I feel sorry for Austin Eckler? Not really. Like, the dude is getting paid a lot of money already.
Everything we're talking about is relative to
like, I feel
other
more
NFL
sorry
players.
for James Robinson than I do for Saquon Barkley on the same team. Saquon's a better player, but James Robinson had a 1,000-yard season out of nowhere as an undrafted free agent, and again, has never, like, hit the big payday yet.
I'm wondering what kind of, when we talk about leverage for the running backs, which doesn't exist, this is coming to my mind right now, so if it's stupid. Do running backs get to the point where they actually don't want the ball? Where they actually start not negotiating directly, but you're encouraging split backfields. You want to just be a 15-carry guy. Like, how is Nick Chubb incentivized to ask for 20 to 25 carries? No, because at some point the answer is not going to be like, you've been great on 25 carries, therefore you'll do it again. It's going to be, you've got too much wear and tear. We're not going to pay you. So they might be best off chasing longevity more than big paydays.
Their leverage, if they want to create one as a running backs union, right, as this Zoom call, whatever it is. So it's never going to happen from the contract point of view because there's a James Robinson waiting to take your spot, right? And you can't criticize that guy for taking it because he's never had the payday yet, right? Like, how can you, as a Saquon Barkley, reasonably expect James Robinson with his career earnings to say, no, sorry, I'm not going to take this offer because my guy Saquon deserves $10 more million. Like, that's never going to happen. So what I think could potentially happen is, as a group, running backs decide, you know what, we're not playing through things anymore. Dalvin Cook going through his whole year with a separated shoulder. As soon as that happens, I'm getting surgery or I'm sitting down. Like, I'm not running into a pile again with a broken shoulder. Forget it. And, the next quad strain or hamstring tear, whatever it is, running backs, all of a sudden, you start to see how injured those guys are getting.
Save the wear and tear, yeah.
And now you got to carry two more of them on the roster or whatever because they're going to sit down the second they get a ding in a game. That, I think, is one potential area where they could actually create some leverage. If they decide, we are no longer playing through things for you because you're not giving us money to as compensation.
That's what I'm wondering, if the play there for running backs is to chase longevity more so than be Frank Gore. Just be kicking around for years, and then in turn your fellow running back brethren are kicking around for years, and kind of force the team's hand and say, look, we get beat. You got to carry 4 or 5 of us.
Right.
You need us around. You can't just kick me to the curb.
Because that's an area where you could actually highlight the problems or offset the problems of how easily replaceable they are. That's fine in theory, but what if you have to do that 7 times in the season? Because every single one of them, as soon as they get, a contusion, is going to go, sorry, I'm out 3 weeks. And now you gotta train up the next guy and make sure he knows all the plays and the protections and blah blah blah. That's when they stop becoming as easily replaceable as you think they are. When you only have a week to get it done, because 3 of them just found themselves to have an injury.
I have no idea if anyone. I try not to listen to other opinions as much as possible, just so I can keep my own without stealing them. I have no idea if other people have brought that up. All I see is like the stuff that does show up on social media that's like, running backs are getting screwed, they're worth way more, and it's like, well, you can't actually justify it. I've even seen people say, use numbers to justify the running back in the inverse, right? To, hey, running backs, get together and show the numbers and stuff, but I don't think that's going to work in their favor. There's too many numbers working the other way.
Yeah, I mean, that's so
when pointing to wins or just where rushing yards come from. I think there's just too much working against running backs to actually make a good data-driven
Timo
argument.
has made that point that some people have said, well, if you get rid of the salary cap, like the salary cap, it's un-American. What are we doing here? Like running backs should get paid as much as you can pay them. He could have made the point of like that's not like running backs are not going to make out better if you remove the cap. Like they might get paid more.
No, you
generally
pay 5 offensive linemen $20 million before you pay 1 running back $20 million.
But they're certainly going to get paid a lot less relative to a lot of other positions. Maybe the net result for running backs ends up being better because everybody gets more money. But like you're not fixing that underlying problem of running backs right now are just seeing a diminishing sense of value from NFL teams.
So yeah, we got into it a little bit.
Yeah, we did well avoiding that.
Well, I've been traveling, I've been on the go, and I didn't get to come up with some points here. All right, now do you want to do year 2 breakouts?
Yeah.
Where'd this come from?
Yeah, it's just the thing you do every year.
Who's going to break out? We just did breakout players like a month ago.
It's fantasy, Steve.
Same players.
It's fantasy season, Steve. People are focusing on who's going to be better this year than last year.
Oh, are these just fantasy players?
No.
Oh, okay.
Because we don't do that in this show.
No.
But I'm just saying, it's fantasy season, so it's the kind of thing people are focusing on.
Oh, can I...
Also, by the way, with your buying into all the training camp hype thing, I saw a quick clip yesterday, and it's like it reminded me how much I loved one of these guys a year ago. So, of course, he's going to be great this year.
Because the hype.
Yeah. Well, because that 3-second video I saw, which, by the way, wasn't even him as the focus of it. It was in the background. Those are the best ones.
Can I just going to do a terrible quick segment here that people are going to not care about, but
great.
I'm losing a source of income.
Oh, yeah?
The Experts Dynasty League is no longer.
Really?
Yeah.
You retired the league. Your victory streak was so strong that they simply abandoned the concept?
That's it. I didn't win it last year, but I did make it the Final 4. That was my worst season out of 7. I won 4 out of the 7 years. Yeah. Finals in 2. Made money every year.
Yeah.
This is like my kids probably won't get Christmas presents this year.
Right.
Because I expect that payout at the end of the year. It's kind of this, we know it's coming,
Budgeted for it, yeah.
It's all budgeted for. And now it's gone.
Huh. How come?
I don't know. They just
you
stopped.
didn't ask questions?
They just stopped. So in my head, when I hear, I got all these college players on the roster, I got all these players that I'm rooting for that I'm not rooting for anymore.
Right.
But end of an era. And the Experts Dynasty League, of which all the experts ended up leaving anyway.
Right.
They all just left. They're like, I can't do this league
It was
anymore.
getting harder and harder to say that with a straight face when you read the participation list over the last few years.
It became a PFF league, basically. No offense to our PFF guys. I'm just saying, like, the industry leaders from all these other websites ended up leaving.
Shout out to our fantasy buddy Ian Hartitz, by the way. I've stolen his mug that he left in the building when he left here.
I stole Eric's.
Yeah.
It's great.
Well, I was sitting upstairs for like 2 years, so I decided I was going to use it for coffee today.
Kelly lost mine, so having Eric crossed Eric's name off and replaced it with mine. Anyway, year 2 breakouts.
Yeah.
Let's do it. What do you got here?
There was a video yesterday from Kansas City Chiefs training camp, and it was like a one-on-one rep of offensive linemen and defensive linemen, but in the background was Sky Moore wrecking some guy on a release. I'm like, see, that's why he should have been good last year. That's why I was buying in to Sky Moore being able to hit the ground running at the NFL level and play outside because of releases like that. So now it's this year. This year it's going to happen. Look, there was something, I don't know why, it didn't happen last year. There was some, he wasn't necessarily on the same page as Mahomes all the time. Now he's had a year to get on the same page. Now we're going to see Sky Moore break out. And by the way, Juju's left now, so he can't take all his targets. Now it's Sky Moore's season.
Kadarius Toney just had a little
Kadarius Toney's always going to have a knee injury. He's not going to be the superstar people think he's going to be.
What do you think, Doctor?
What's a
little cartilage cleanup in late July? What's that look like?
Not much. Just a couple of weeks. But the point is, you're going to get the next one of those. Like, he's always going to have one of those. He's one of these guys, right? Every 3 weeks, you're going to have some form of knee problem.
We're early. I feel like I could use a little cartilage cleanup for the knee to get ready for the season.
Probably.
Could probably use a little. If they scope, is it still a knee scope?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Use a little scope here, a little cleanup.
Get it tidied up. Yeah.
I
mean, look, the amount of force that's getting put through your knees on a regular basis, there's got to be something wrong with them.
It's not good. I've got, I don't know. My whole body's falling apart. I've got fat knees now. Came to that realization. I'm a fat knee person. Like something's got to change here. You'll see. You've only been 41 for 2 days, but you'll see.
I don't have enough weight on me, and I'm putting it on, but I don't have enough on me to create fat knees.
You'll notice
there's not enough force being put through my knees on a step-by-step basis.
You'll notice other things. I'm just going to list a lot of the breakouts we had from the other show. Isaiah Likely.
Well, that's good content.
Like, who were the year 2 breakouts?
Well, okay.
I got some other ones.
I had Sky Moore. That's my number one.
Oh, you give all yours. Yeah.
I saw the video, therefore it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I've decided that within the Saints offense, the guy that's going to see the jump is not Chris Olave. It's Rashid Shaheed.
Ooh.
And not just because his name's more fun to say. But so if Michael Thomas comes back and is anything this year, and who the hell knows if that's actually going to be a thing.
Full go at camp.
Right. We talked to our guy Vic, the medical expert, and he's worried about, Michael Thomas and expecting anything from him. But if he creates any form of presence in that offense over the season, I don't see where the targets go to get Chris Olave a bigger season than he had last year. But I can see an increased role for Shaheed, which was already happening once they realized what they had in him last year. Like, his workload scaled up over the course of the season. I can absolutely believe them going into this season going, all right, this is the role for Michael Thomas, this is the role for Chris Olave. Now let's make sure we're getting enough out of Shaheed, and he's the guy whose production is going to get inflated.
Shaheed was an awesome deep threat last year for the Saints with Andy Dalton under center. The Derek Carr stories that we've been telling over the last couple of years was they drafted Henry Ruggs, tried to get him throwing the ball down the field. Ruggs' first season, it was actually Zay Jones it was Nelson Aguilar who became the deep threat for Carr and the Raiders, and then Ruggs kind of took over before his horrible incident. But Carr certainly works better with that one, take the top off the defense type of guy that you're featuring, so that could certainly work out well.
Right. Number 3 for me, Bernard Ryman, the offensive tackle for the Colts.
Nice.
He played pretty well last year. Had one of the worst debuts I've ever seen from anybody at any position. And then almost immediately kind of got it back on track. And it kind of flew under the radar because the line itself didn't necessarily improve. But I think given what Ryman showed and given how young he still is to playing football, I think you can actually expect him to be good this year as a left tackle. So I'm kind of excited by him. Trent McDuffie as the corner. We're going to focus on, all the other young guys, whether it's Tariq Woolen taking the step forward to join Sauce Gardner as one of the best, whether it's Derek Stingley. McDuffie's season was another one I think that flew under the radar because he got hurt early, missed a lot of time, got concussed, missed some more time. But from day one, they were actually giving him pretty difficult assignments, out on his own, on an island in man coverage. He played pretty well over the course of it, had his run through to the Super Bowl. I think in year 2, he could be a guy that actually shows you that he belonged in that discussion with Sauce and with Stingley at the top of that draft. And then the 5th guy, the most obvious one for me, Nakobe Dean. TJ Edwards out, Nakobe Dean in. No drop off. We're going to see Nakobe Dean.
He's going to be there. He's going to be playing football.
Yes.
So that's those are good breakout candidates. I don't know how much crossover there was with our list from previous shows, but people don't listen to every single show we have, so it's okay.
Okay,
you're allowed to repeat yourself. So those are your year 2 breakouts.
Yeah.
All right. So I've got offensive side of the ball, Isaiah Likely.
Mm-hmm.
That's sometimes sometimes the training camp buzz hits year 2.
Even though they're going to be pivoting towards more wide receivers, fewer tight ends in that offense under Monken.
I don't know that they're definitely going to, but Likely's he's like a big receiver, So I think there'll be a role for Isaiah Likely. Rashad White of the Bucs at running back. I think they're going to make him their workhorse there. The thing working against Rachaad White is I don't trust the offensive line that much. But I think White...
Or the offense generally.
Or the offense generally. But I think White is going to have... I think they're going to run the ball, volume-wise, a lot more than they did last year because it's going to be Kyle Trask or Baker Mayfield under center. But Rachaad White, I'm trusting the talent.
Okay.
Talented running back. So all of these kind of contradict themselves because I don't know if the opportunity, I don't know if it's the right environment for a breakout, but I'm trusting the talent. Greg Dulcich, tight end for the Broncos. I don't know if you ever want to predict a tight end breakout for a Russell Wilson offense. It's not his cup of tea necessarily, but Dulcich is great.
Did Sean Payton connect his name to Taysom Hill, or was that other people connecting the dots of Payton said some nice things about Dulcich, he's going to be his Sean Payton? Because if...
His Taysom Hill?
Yeah, sorry, his Taysom Hill. Because if Payton himself linked Dulcich to Taysom Hill, there will be opportunity.
You buy in.
Right. There will be opportunity.
He'll have his contract ripped up and restructured.
Fact, there will be vastly more opportunity than he deserves. But if it was other people connecting those dots, then not necessarily.
Red zone quarterback, Greg Dulcich.
Yeah.
Defensive side of the ball, I just listed, let's say 3 names. Marcus Jones for the Patriots.
Mm-hmm.
We saw him as an explosive offensive playmaker, but he'll go back to playing slot corner and being awesome once he's given the opportunity this year for the Patriots. Jordan Davis for the Eagles. We only saw him for the 270 snaps or whatever it was last year. He was hurt for some of it and got beat up while he was hurt, but I think if he's healthy, Jordan Davis, Eagles, big 340-pound nose tackle, will be good. And his former teammate, Devontae Wyatt. 2 guys who just played not a ton of snaps, first-rounders, Georgia.
Wyatt's a good one.
They'll get their year 2 opportunity. And both guys graded pretty well, graded in the green as far as their first season, get to 400, 500 snaps for Davis, get to maybe 600, 700 snaps for Wyatt. Those guys will be good.
Wyatt will be a fun one to watch because he basically didn't get given much of an opportunity last year at all. Remember the talk that, Andy Dalton was the starting quarterback until it was earned? Nothing's going to be given. It's all got to be earned. Andy Dalton, we signed him for a reason. He's going to be our starter.
In Carolina.
Yeah.
Yes.
Over Bryce Young, the number 1 overall pick.
Right.
And we debated at the time, how long would that actually happen? And I'm pretty sure we said there's no way that Bryce Young won't be starting at the start of the season. However long they debate this thing for. Let me just read you a sentence and then a second sentence. Panthers rookies, including the number 1 overall pick, Bryce Young, will report to training camp on July the 22nd. That's Sunday? No, Saturday. Last Sunday, Saturday. Veterans will report on July 25th. That's yesterday. And the first practice will be held Wednesday, July 26th at 10:15 a.m. That's an hour and a half ago. Cut to head coach Frank Reich announcing the number 1 overall pick, Bryce Young, is their starting quarterback. So it took an hour and a half for Bryce Young to jump Andy Dalton as the starting quarterback in Carolina.
Judging by all the information that you just threw out there, I think it's safe to say that starting job has been earned.
Yes, he earned it. He earned it the whole way. An hour and a half of practice. Boom, done. That's all I need to see.
We also have another development on that app called Twitter.
Not anymore.
X.
Oh, God.
Brad Spielberger, who's done a great job. Appreciate him filling in as needed around here. Big part of the PFF NFL podcast here recently. He has tweeted eyeball emoji.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
That's it?
Yep.
That's all we got?
That means by tomorrow's show, something big may have happened. Now, I tweet the eyeball emoji every now and again. Now, he just responded, great throw in training camp from CJ Stroud.
Oh, that was it?
I think he usually has dirt. He has stuff.
Stuff.
But he can't always break it, I'm guessing by tomorrow's show we'll have some breaking news per Brad's eyeball emojis. Because sometimes I just throw it out there and I don't have anything. Not gonna lie.
No, you just troll people.
Oh, yeah. Big time. Brad, though, he wouldn't do such a thing.
No.
He wouldn't troll. We got something good happening. Maybe it's just the Bryce Young's QB1. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe. So it took an hour and a half for Bryce Young to become number 1. Stroud is starting as number 1, right? They're not even entertaining the he's just the guy. They're not even.
Who's the backup there?
Davis Mills.
Oh, right.
Right. So they're not even you don't even need to earn it from Davis. It's just yours.
Yeah, Stroud is head and shoulders above Davis Mills.
Richardson and
Right
Minshew. I think they started off with Richardson, right? They already went, look, Gardner's the better guy right now, but we need Richardson on the field.
Did you tell people where we're going?
How many of them we got locked in?
Just 2.
Just 2? We're going to be
We're
going
between
to
2 and 5 training camps.
some training camps within driving distance.
The ones we know for sure will be in Indianapolis next week.
Okay.
And we'll be in Detroit for Jaguars-Lions joint practice. Probably get Doug Peter. We should be able to. I'll text Doug, see if we can get him back on the show.
Yeah, he gave us an interview last time.
I know.
A little drive-by in the media row on the,
Maybe we'll do a drive-by up in Detroit when we go up there.
Maybe.
For an interview.
Yeah.
Of course. So, yeah, we've got some travel coming up. We're going to go to some places.
Uh-huh. So that was those 3. Is there any other rookie quarterbacks that are going to be starting? Who am I missing? Levis didn't. He's not going to be.
Jake Haener might take Derek Carr's job.
Sure. So it's those 3. Okay, so the only changes that need to be made have already been made, essentially. Bryce Young, it took him an hour and a half of training camp.
No drama.
To jump the great Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle.
Yeah. All right. Is that it? Is that today's show? It's good to be back.
I think so.
Just rambling about some NFL football, making news where there isn't any, talking contracts. It's awesome. Appreciate everybody being here.
Welcome back.
Well, it's good to be back. We're here. Anyway, happy training camp, everybody. A couple questions I have.
Uh-huh.
Is there any interest from our listeners in any kind of NFL draft discussion throughout the season? Is there any interest? High level, basic stuff? Is there any interest in that?
Well, we're going to have, theoretically, 5 shows a week to fill.
Let's see what we have to fill. I'm just saying, is there any interest in NFL draft? Because I've got some preseason takes when it comes to the draft. I've been getting the first look going. I got some preseason takes.
I've looked at like 3 players. Does that count?
Sure.
Okay.
If it's the right players.
I mean,
I'm always trying to nudge you into draft analysis a little bit sooner.
I looked a lot at Marvin Harrison.
Yeah.
That's the one that I've
Save the takes. But I'm interested in how many people care about the draft throughout the, again, high level, player analysis, that type of thing. And there was one other thing I was going to ask.
Yeah.
If people wanted to.
And you've forgotten what it is? That's going to make it difficult to ask.
Focused on the draft aspect of it.
Uh-huh. We still need the next charity suggestion, both in terms of the charity to donate to and in terms of the thing we can do. One thing I would say is we've had quite a lot of people suggest that we do dueling things, which is fine. The only problem with that is, so they've suggested, we raise the money and then whoever wins the challenge between you and I, that's the charity that the money goes to. The only issue with that is it's very easy to raise the money using GoFundMe as opposed to anything else, and that the money goes straight to them immediately.
It doesn't have to be like that though. The way we did it last time, I think we both raised money and then it goes to both, but one of us, wins.
But that's what I'm saying, is that in order to do it in such a way where you raise the money and then all of the money goes in one direction.
But we just won't do it.
You can't do it. Well, you can, but it's more of a pain in the ass.
We don't want to have all the money go in one direction. We can have it go to 2 different places.
Just
you
saying,
pick one,
a lot
I pick
of people
one.
have suggested that as a concept, that all of the money that we raise separately and all of the money goes to the place that whichever one of us wins the challenge determines. That's a much more pain in the ass way of doing it in terms of the logistics of the money raising. So I would simply suggest that that's not a great mechanism for whatever we're doing. We just need charity thing, which can be a competition between you and I. It's just that won't determine where the money goes.
The one thing I was going to ask was, was anybody interested in a quick off-season recap show? Because I presented that. I saw someone on ESPN did it. Here's everything you need to know from the off-season in case you forgot.
Uh-huh.
Free agency, draft, trades, biggest stories. We will, and we're pretty quick, so we'll just super it'll be in 5 minutes.
Uh-huh.
Off-season, well, that's what it'll be. Off-season, recapping the off-season in 5 minutes.
Yeah, like a five show
and
special.
We'll just remind everybody. It will just kind of reset things as training camp starts this week. Or we have a whole show reacting to all training camp videos. We'll show the video and then react. Show the video, react. That'd be a great show. React to all of the training camp.
It's definitely going to get us pulled down of YouTube.
Perfect. Anyway, that's it for us. We'll be back again tomorrow. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. See you tomorrow with more PFF NFL Podcast.